Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me for doing this session. Um, so um, I'm going to talk about kind of a journey I took to learn Content Hub, Experience Edge, and Jamstack architecture. Um, so I'm going to share that journey with you. Um, I do not see myself as a front-end developer. My experience mostly around back-end and integration and architecture and this kind of thing. But recent advancement of technology and the way Sitecore is changing. Um, Last year, I thought that you cannot really avoid learning front end. So I dive into it and learn a lot of things, even things that I didn't think that I will actually learn, which is HTML, CSS, and things. It was kind of fun. Um, Also, it was different. So I'd like to share my learning with you. Um, before that, I just came back from SUG, which happened in Budapest, Hungary, and I have to tell you that things are changing very fast, and Sitecore is changing very fast, and we got to see some of their roadmap, and I will share probably one or two things here what I have seen there, um, and you will be probably surprised how Sitecore is going, and I think is with composable and headless and things like that. Front end will be on the forefront. So it's something that everyone should actually probably look into. Okay. So being said that, my name is Himadri Chakrabarti, and I am a Sitecore community member. I love this community, and I try to share as much as I can. You can reach me in Twitter. I am in Slack and all places where Sitecore folks hang around. Okay, that's me. And also, I work in a company called Nextjs here in US. I am their global VP of technology. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? We'll take a quick look at the static website that I had to build for this journey. And then we'll talk about the architecture, starting from how prototype was made, and then how I actually step by step built it using JSON server, Content Hub, and change it to change the architecture to make it content as a service, and then we'll look into Experience Edge. So there are a lot of content. I had done that before, but I actually had to remove some of them because it's just too much content to go through. So, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so prototype demo quickly. What are we going to see here? I think everyone is aware of Vercel. It's like Nextjs, and then you can host your website in Vercel. So I built my website and then I hosted in Vercel. It's actually a static website. It's HTML only. So we'll dive into understand how that works. But basically, this is Vercel console, and I have this website here that is hosted. And if I go here, this is a simple website on photography. So there are pictures and there are photographers, camera, or camera designer. So, and this is kind of, the structure is kind of like, you can go to different menu, navigate to photography, and then you can see the blogs, photography blog here, and then you can go to the detail of that photography page. So this all is running from Vercel, but the content is coming from Content Hub, which is Content Hub plus Experience Edge. So this is just that website running on Vercel. So we'll come back to it later, but let's talk about how this is built. Okay, so when I started working on it, let's actually go back to the previous slide a bit. So when I started working on it, I thought that I will start as usually we do, we'll be building a prototype first, and then we'll go from there. So for that, I actually built a prototype. So um, so I started with HTML. So by the way, as I said, I wanted to learn the front end, so I thought that I should actually work on HTML and CSS and things like that. So I even didn't think that I can learn so much HTML, and there are so many things to learn there. So I built this website using HTML and then SAS. Basically, as you know, SAS is actually a language which you can convert to CSS by using SAS compiler, uh, and structure it using HTML and SAS. And then use the live server to actually host it. So this is that prototype running on the live server. This is just HTML and CSS. Live server, if you don't know, is actually very useful for running a server on your HTTP server on your machine, and it has a lot of features that you can use. So this is that website. I'm not going to talk too much about the HTML and CSS here. This code is shared in GitHub, so you can take a look. But this is where I started, and I built all the HTML for different section, photography, this HTML, and then use CSS classes in that. So that's where I started. So once the prototype was done, I thought that how I'm going to build this. So and the framework of choice was obviously Nextjs. So I thought that okay, we'll build it using Nextjs, but not necessarily I need a content management system for building it, because at the end, like, I'll be using the um, Experience Edge Content Hub, and Content Hub and Experience Edge is actually a headless system. So what I need is actually, what I need is APIs that returns data from the Content Hub. In Content Hub and Experience Edge case, it is actually a GraphQL, which will return GraphQL endpoint, which will return the data in JSON format. Okay, so instead of starting with a content management system, I can really build the JSON. If I have enough knowledge about the structure and schema of my content, I can really build the JSON, and I can use something like JSON server to return that JSON in the form of API. So if you do not know JSON or not aware of JSON server, it's actually an NPM package. So you can build the JSON. You can create a JSON file, and then you can run the JSON server, and it will actually nicely um, like build the APIs for you, and you can use that API in your application. So I can start with JSON server and build my Next.js application, and using that I can build the website to start with. So that was the next step. So that's how I build the site using Next.js without having a content management system. So let's take a look at that. Let me see. So this is my Next.js application, and it all shared in the it's all shared in GitHub. I have the link at the end of this uh, presentation. So there are a lot of code. Obviously, we are not going to talk about all the code here, but I will definitely talk about how this works. Um, So we are building a static website. That means that we will be using Next.js static generation. And basically, the way static generation works is actually you build the Next.js application, and at the build time, it runs the application and build the HTML, and then from there, HTML is which is rendered. And now if you change something in your code, or if you change something in your content, you go and build again. So there are efficient way to do that. We can talk about that later. So if we are using JSON server. So to run this application, we have to start the JSON server, which I'm going to start in a different terminal. So if we start the JSON server, by the way, this JSON server is running on this JSON file, which I built manually. So these are kind of like, you can see the menu item. So this is its data structure for the menu item. And now I'm running the JSON server on this JSON file, and it exposes those items as API. Now, if I go to, and it is running on localhost 4000, if I go to this URL, so it actually shows that localhost 4000 menus, it returns the menu items. So I can grab this API endpoint and get the menu item and use that in my Next.js application. So that's exactly what this is doing. So in my other terminal, if I run my Next.js application now, So before I run that, I just want to show you, like, this line of code. It says my API helper is JSON server API helper. So I'll talk about this in a bit. But basically, this means that I am using JSON Server API to run this application. We can change this to different API helper, which we'll see later. So if I run the application on Nextjs application run by default on localhost 3000. So if I go here, now my application is running on JSON server, and this is the same website that I was showing you from Vercel. But in this case, the data is coming from JSON server. So if you look at the while I'm running this website, if you look at here, every time I go to a page, it basically calls all these API endpoints and return the data from the JSON server. So without using content management system, I could build the application just using the JSON server. Okay, so that's JSON server demo. Let's just stop that and get rid of this page. Otherwise, I'll probably. Okay. So now think about, we are replacing JSON server with Content Hub. If we do that, then JSON's Content Hub will take the place of JSON server, and I can create the content in the Content Hub, and Content Hub API will return the content, and I can basically use that in my Next.js application and build my static website from that. Okay. So that's where I was trying to go. That I can actually replace one content management system with other. We'll talk about that in a bit. But let's talk about Content Hub for a moment here. So if we use Content Hub, what are different options for me to actually get the data from the Content Hub? So there are many options. You can use just REST API um, because at the end, is the REST API that's there to render content from the Content Hub. Then on the top of that, they have created the web client SDK or JavaScript SDK, which is really a wrapper on the top of the REST API. So you can use web client SDK. Usually you will be using web client SDK from the .NET applications. And if you are a good JavaScript developer, you can use JavaScript SDK. But as I said, they are just wrapper on the top of the REST API. But if you use Content Hub, those are three options to get to Content Hub data. There is no GraphQL API. There is no preview API. So only you have REST APIs and then these two SDKs available. So so if we are building something like this, a website using Content Hub as the content management system, it is highly recommended that you use Experience Edge because Experience Edge was created for omnichannel application. That means that if you have different kind of devices, you have website, your website is responsive, and then you want to, like, show things on mobile, in phone, tablet, or Apple Watch or whatnot. So you can use GraphQL if you use Experience Edge. And as you know, GraphQL is much more efficient in that sense. You can get the data, whatever data you need, you can actually ask for that data. It's actually client. Client is what controls what kind of data or how much data you want to get from the server. So it's highly recommended that use Experience Edge, because if you use just Content Hub, first of all, like, you will get everything from the API, and also it's not as efficient as GraphQL. Um, but then also Experience Edge provides you the preview API. We'll talk about that in a bit. If you can think of that like a CD and CM in Sitecore. So you publish things, and that's when data shows up in CD. But if you are not publishing, you can see that in the CM. So in case of Experience Edge and Content Hub, there is no CD as such, CDCM. Everything is actually in the Edge. So you need a preview API to see your changes. But if you use Experience Edge, you have additional cost. You need Experience Edge license, and then because you are using Experience Edge service, that will have extra cost. But these are the options. Then the question may come, like, why we will have even, like, REST API, web client SDK, JavaScript SDK in Content Hub. That's because you do not only, like, create website. If you want to work with Content Hub, you may need to bulk load data in the Content Hub. So, or, like, create a connector between Content Hub and Sitecore. So in those cases, you will be using the web client SDK or JavaScript SDK or REST API. That's why it's useful. Okay. So if we do that, if we actually host our content in the Content Hub, we have to create a structure. So I will show you quickly what the structure looks like. So this is my Content Hub. Let me see. Okay. So basically the structure is I created some content collections. Okay, so each of the menu items you have seen in the website, they are coming from collections. So if I go to, for example, camera, it's a collection, and then I have 3 blogs in the camera collection, and I can go to one of these blogs, and basically I have my content here. I can edit my content, and then like, publish them. And then the, like, images and everything are stored in the Content Hub also. So in the assets, you can see all the images. These images are used in the content. It's pretty simple structure. So each of these collection contains blogs, and blogs contains their content, and the images is in asset, and image URL is used in the in the blog. So that's pretty much the structure. So when we'll see different CMS used, we'll come back here and take a look at the data a bit more to understand how it is working. But that's the structure. Okay. Now, the next thought was, okay, I can actually create my website using Next.js. I can get the content from my content management system. But how can I make this static website like, decoupled? So the idea is that I can use JSON server to start with. I can use Content Hub with Experience Edge. Can I actually make it in a way that I can actually switch between CMS, and can use CMS as a headless service. So basically, the idea is actually the architecture. When we build our architecture, we think in a way that it can be decoupled. It can be as much decoupled as it can be, so that we can actually, like, easily replace things. So in this diagram on the left, you see the traditional CMS implementation. So in the traditional CMS implementation, like Sitecore XP or current Sitecore XM, um, you can we build the application on the top of the CMS. There is really no separation between the CMS and the application. So everything is one, okay, which is on the left diagram. And then you have other services which we nowadays we are talking about composable DXP. You once you build things in XM or XP, you can connect to, like, Salesforce CRM. You can connect to CDP, or you can connect to a different search. So those can come as actually a service, and you can build the application that way. But if you when you build in traditional CMS like XP, you will not be able to separate your application from the CMS. So it's not easy to actually switch your application to different CMS. But if we think about headless CMS is more of like a service, like CRM or CDP. So we can build our application, web application, on the headless CMS, where headless CMS is used as a service. So on the right side of the diagram, where you can see that web application is in the middle and everything is service, so headless CMS is also a service. In such situation, you can actually build the application in a way that you can use different CMS. So it is possible to build the application in a way, decoupled way, so that you can switch CMS without making much changes in the code. So that was the concept I was trying to get to. So next few slides and the demo will see how that is built. So if we can do that, if we can build our application in that way, then we can say our content is in Sitecore Content Hub, and then we can actually deploy our application to Vercel, where content is coming from the Content Hub, or we can completely use a different CMS. So we can use Contentful, or we can use Content Stack and others headless CMS, and basically render our content from that CMS. So we can switch between between CMS if we can build that kind of architecture. Um, so we'll see some demo um, of that when we see the code. So if we try to build a website in that way, as I was talking about the decoupled nature of the architecture, we need to actually think about some patterns. So, and that's actually, there is one pattern everyone knows about, is that actually when we create the decoupled architecture is inversion of control. In inversion of control, you create an architecture where you can build the architecture or build the application based on interfaces, and then you decide what interface to use. Okay. In this case, I was talking about different CMS. So I want to switch the CMS. So I have to actually create a interface which will represent the CMS methods, and then I can replace that interface with different CMS implementation. So in this diagram, um, what basically we need is, I needed is actually a IAPI helper interface. It is an interface which has all the methods to go to a CMS and get data. For example, we want to get the menu, we want to get the banner, we want to get the blogs. So all those methods are part of the API helper. And then we have different implementation of IAPI helper. So Contentful implementation, Experience Edge implementation, JSON server implementation. And once we have those implementations, then since this is all front-end code, this is Nextjs and basically running JavaScript and TypeScript, we need a dependency injection framework, which is implementation of IRC. So the one dependency injection framework available for TypeScript is called tsyringe. So I have used tsyringe to build the dependency injection. So basically what tsyringe does is it has an injector, and then we'll take a look at this code in a bit. But basically, when a static generation happens, it actually calls the get static prof helper in every page. And in get static prof helper, it registers the API helper. So it decides which API helper to be used. So once this is registered, there are a couple of services where it injects that helper. And if, for example, Experience Edge helper is registered, Experience Edge helper will be injected in the page component service or page layout service. And any call you make to the in those services, it will go to the implementation, Experience Edge implementation. So then the data will come from that implementation. Um, so it's a bit complex, but you can actually take a look at the code which is available in GitHub. It's not that complex, but it's actually, if you look at the code flow, and which I'll show you in the next slide, you will be able to understand how this is working. Basically, the idea is you decide what API helper to register based on your choice of CMS. Okay. So as I said, what is the program flow then? Uh, in every, as I mentioned in Nextjs, when you build the static website, every page in your Nextjs code has a method called get static prop, and Nextjs at the build time will make a call to that, and basically that's the entry point for the Nextjs, and from there you do whatever necessary to build the HTML, like you return the data. So there is actually this get static prop method, and only thing that I have done is kind of refactored. So every page calls a get static prop helper um, uh, class, which has, like, for example, for home page, it actually has a method called get home page static props. And for a different page, like, for photography, it has a different method. But the refactor reason to refactor is actually, like, moving the methods in one place. So in the get static prop helper, it uses those services, page layout services, for all the page related method, like, every page has menu, every page has footer. So it basically calls those methods. And then page component services, for the components. Page may have a banner, page may have, like, a blog. So the component service returns the has those component methods. And once in the service, it actually, for example, in this case, page component service or page layout service, um, menu items, right? And the page layout service has a injector, and it looks for the API helper, and whatever API helper is registered, it will pick up that API helper, and then using that API helper, it will get the data. So in this case, API helper dot get menu items. If it is a JSON server, it will go to JSON server. If it is a experience edge, it will go to the experience edge. Okay, so this code does not change. What changes is actually the registered API helper, and you can build everything. Everything remains same, except that you can add more and more, like, CMS related API helper, as you wish. Okay, so that's the program flow. So so if we do that, now we can actually use any sort of CMS. For example, like, I can use Content Hub with Experience Edge. I can just use Content Hub, which is not advisable once I build that, but, like, I don't use anymore. But basically, using Content Hub JavaScript SDK also, you can build something, or you can use Contentful. So any of the CMS that you can use, and then you can deploy the code in Vercel. And basically, Vercel will generate the static pages, and that will be rendered in the Vercel Edge. So it opens up the possibility for us to like use any headless CMS system. So I'm talking about this using using different CMSs. So you might think that like um, is it something that someone will do? Actually, is it something that Sitecore would like to do? And you will be surprised where Sitecore is going. So in one of the session in Sakan, we are seeing roadmap. Sitecore is working on component builder, which is like site builder. You may have heard about it in the last symposium where they talked about like Symfony. So they are talking about actually opening up their system for the other content management system. So this is one of the slides that was shared in there. And if you see it, you can see here that picture is not very clear, but you can see Contentful Kentico. So they're talking about bringing other content management systems. So they are not thinking, okay, this is Sitecore only. They are thinking like, you can even use other content management system along, like, with Sitecore. So you can, the component builder that they're building, that can actually, that will work with other content management system. So it's really not a crazy idea. It's composable. So basically is probably the direction Sitecore is going. Okay. All right, I'll go through the demo quickly because we do not have too much time. I was showing you this content structure here. So if you see here, I can go to Yosemite and just notice this serve from Edge. So this content is in the in Content Hub. I do have also the content in Contentful. So one of those contents is this blog, and if you see the title, it says this served from Contentful. So if I go to the code, so we have seen like how things are working with JSON server. Let's say I want to. This is, by the way, this is the line of code where I change my API helper, and this is the get prof helper, static prof helper, which registered that API helper. So I can change this to Xedge. So if I do that, say my API helper now should be Experience Edge API helper implementation. So if I run the site now, and if I open up the site, so this is now running from Experience Edge. If I go to photography, you see that this, I was showing you that serve from Experience Edge. This was my content. So this is coming from Experience Edge. But if I change my code to register Contentful, so I select Contentful, Contentful as my content management system. It's hot loading, so it's Webpack. So it's hot loading, it compiled. Now if I go to my site and refresh it, so this is now coming from Contentful. Um, I can go to my photography page and you can see this is served from the Contentful, and the image and everything is different too. So that is how easily I can change my my code to, like, point to different CMS system. And now basically, let's say uh, this was running from my you know from my uh, uh, from my local. Okay. But I can I'm not going to deploy it now in Vercel, but one way to basically, for example, let's say I change this, and I change this, and once I change this, this will be published, but I can actually, this is still publishing, but when I change the content, and I will not have time to actually talk about this, but I change the content, so my website generation should happen again. Otherwise, like, new data will not show up in the website. So I have a blog about how I'm doing it here, but basically I have a webhook with Vercel, and if I click on this button, that webhook gets called, and Vercel build will actually show that it is building. So there's something that will show up here. So basically, if I go and say generate static page, the action is called, and when I go back to Vercel, in a second, that you will, I'm expect to see, yeah, so something is happening. So since that webhook is used and action is called, Vercel is started building the um, application. And if this is published, uh, then um, like, yeah, it is published. So you will see that change after Vercel finish building it. So it takes, like, few seconds. While it is building, let's actually use this time to look at um, something else, which is, I'll close this. Um, so so the way data coming from the Experience Edge is actually using GraphQL. There are a lot of documentation. You can read about that. But basically, uh, there is and preview and then the delivery. So this is the endpoint for the delivery. And you can see that this is this will change. So this is the ID, and the GraphQL query. So you can use GraphQL endpoint to get the data. So this is the playground, and you can see that the change I made actually is showing up. The thing is, this is just a quick uh, that is already in the delivery access delivery server delivery endpoint. But for example, like, if this is not published, okay, what will happen is, in the playground, where you are looking at the preview API. Preview API has a different key. So Content Hub Experience Edge knows that this is for the preview API. So if you go there, you will see the unpublished data. So this is actually now showing this updated. This is already published, but if I had actually this is not published, you would see that. I mean, I can quickly show you. Maybe. So, no, that's not the one. Okay, I don't have much time, so I will just try to do it quickly. Let's go to the collection and photography. Let's remove this. Save this. So I have actually saved it. Now, if you run the preview API, you will see that data is gone. But if you go to the delivery API, you will not see that data change. Until it is published, that data will not be changed. Okay. So that's the purpose of this preview API. Okay, now this is done, and I can go to the Nextjs, and I can bring up my site, see that updated, change is showing up because Vercel built with the new data. Okay, so that's the demo. Let's see, demo is done. Experience GraphQL demo is done. Okay, that's all I had. We have 5 more minutes. This is some links. You can go to my blog and read about how this is done, and the code is also available in GitHub. So if you have any questions, I can answer that now.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, Himadri. Thanks for the session. So one question I have, so for a traditional Sitecore setup, right, we will be having content, and the content will be organized in a way based on the client requirement, right, like a global content, local content, and it will be having pages will be there, components will be there, and on the page, we can have page layout. There we can set up the content through components, right? And even you have the data sources, and maybe from external system also. Sometime we can run the job and we can sync the data back to Sitecore, and it's highly flexible with that. So those kind of requirement, can we consider Content Hub? Basically, whenever we are going for a large application, all these kind of edge cases will be coming, right? And again with the search, so we'll be having a facet search and the global search. So how Solar or what kind of search mechanism Content Hub is supporting? So can you give some lights on that part?
Yeah, very good question. It's actually an age-old question of headless CMS versus agile CMS. So headless CMS as a service is good, but it lacks a lot of things that you are talking about. Okay, there is no page layout. It's not like, marketer friendly like Sitecore. So people like, some people they have reservation about like, completely go headless because it's just like, does not support those kind of feature. Um, so you are talking about layout and things, which is really useful in case of like, when you are building something in Sitecore, marketer can go to the experience page and like, horizon, and they can see things and change things. So there is no actually one answer for this. I'm going to talk about your search question. Um, it, in the headless like, architecture or headless using headless CMS, you have to actually think that those feature will not be available. I am not going to say like, not be available, because some of the work Sitecore is doing now using the like, horizon and the component builder and things, where you can actually use headless system but still use something like, um, something like experience, like, what is that called, page editor, actually experience editor, kind of thing. But it does lack a lot of things like that. So you have to think about building application on the top of the API, right? So you can get everything about layout, service, and things, which is JSS does, like, but you still have the dependency on Sitecore. So as far as like, to the bottom line is like, there are things that you will not be able to do. Um, but there are good things in headless also. But about search, basically we have to look at search if we are going with this architecture and content hub and things. You have to look at search as kind of a service. So in case of like, content hub, if you want to use search, then you have to actually push it to a search service, which is like, also Sitecore Discover, or there are search services like Algolia, where you can basically take your data and push your data in the search service and basically use their API to do the search and tie it with your content in the content hub. So everything is like work as a service. Whereas in the traditional XP and things, they're solar and everything is in one place and comes with Sitecore, right? It is just different. I'm not sure, like,
Okay,
I
so
answered all your question or not, but yeah.
yeah, I got the point actually what you said. So thanks for that, Himandri. And maybe this is the last question. So when you're talking about pushing content into search services, so do we need to write some service for that, or it is something out of the box coming with Content Hub, like
I'm not
Covio, right?
aware.
Okay.
No, I'm not aware of that anything is coming from the. So one thing that I want to tell you is Content Hub is actually a like the Content Hub is a lot more than just the content management system. Um, it's actually a DAM. It's a digital
Yeah.
asset management system. It's
Yeah.
also a product management system, right? It's a
Yeah.
PCM,
Yeah.
DAM, and then CMP. CMP is just one part of it. And I would
Hmm.
say, like, I don't see Content Hub just as a pure content management system like Sitecore. So so I would think, and then there are other things that is in content management system, which is like, managing campaign, like, your marketing campaign and things. So its purpose is a little different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
understood.
yeah.
Maybe one option would be to write a GraphQL and do the search techniques, right? Whatever is required.
I would not advise that, because search is, search is different. Search is how search works. Like, if you think about Solar or Algolia or anything, search is actually you will give data and then it will build index, and then you will use query to search data from the index, right?
Yeah.
So you need something like that, like, Solar or Elasticsearch. In case of Content Hub, I know that data is actually in Elasticsearch. But I don't, like, when you are using GraphQL, it actually not that it is directly querying Content Hub database or anything. It still queries from the Elasticsearch, okay? But it does not, like, expose data as like a search application. So so you need something like a search application. Maybe I need to also look at a little bit on, like, is GraphQL something that can provide search, as you are saying?
Okay, thanks, Himadri.